wonder gators are.
Broadcasting across Australia on Dare Media Group radio stations, this is the Sportcat Show, uncovering secret chapters, strange encounters,
and the occasional technical mishap.
That's right. There's always the occasional technical mishap. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sportcat Show, formerly known as the Paranormal Guys. We're live on Dare Talk Radio and overnight in Pine Island, Florida on WZQR. And we want to thank Nashville for the weekend play on WRFN. Thank you, and I encourage everybody, if you have a question for the guest, we are live in the YouTubes. Come over and find us. And while you're here, give us a subscription, a thumbs up, an attaboy, something under the Sportcat shows. I'm joined by my beautiful co-host, Jen. Hello, Jen.
Hello.
How are you tonight? Chris is
I am pretty darn spiffy.
You are. You are.
I am. There's no other way to be.
Well, that's good. So we've got a guest tonight that you were really excited about because, well, you and him, well, as I used to say, you ain't from around here. I ain't from around there. Are from the same neck of the woods. Joel, he's an author from the eerie woods of British Columbia. So let's bring Joel out. He can tell us about his book and British Columbia, and we'll see what else he's got going on there. Hey, Joel, how are you?
Good. How are you both doing?
Doing great. Doing great. So
awesome.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
What I mean, where does one begin? I live in the, and Jen will get a kick out of this because she's from actually a much smaller community, much smaller community. I live in a city called Prince George. Prince George is about 100,000 people. It's about 900 kilometers. I don't know, I can't translate that into miles for our American viewers. 900 kilometers north of Vancouver. So if you've ever heard of Vancouver on the west coast of Canada, which is where I was born and raised, I now live 900 kilometers north of that, what is effectively called northern BC, but is really actually just the center of the province. Yeah, right in the middle. BC is a very large place. It can fit California, Washington, and Oregon within its borders. And northern BC, if you define it, is about the size of France. And that's my Maine Coon, who has decided to join me for this lovely interview. Her name is Daphne. Anyway, I live in a forest city in the far northern wilds of British Columbia, and my fiction is a representative of that. I love to write about this place, so we can start there, but ask whatever you want and I'll dive into it.
Okay, no, that's good. So yeah, you've got a new book coming out, or is it already out?
It's out. Yeah, it was released last August. It's my first full novel and my first fantasy. I've previously published a fair bit of horror, but yeah, this is my first, effectively a young adult fantasy sword and sorcery novel. So a bit of a different track for me, but actually it's a return to what I think of as my roots, the thing I always wanted to write, the thing I started reading when I was a kid. It's called The Dungeoneers and the Treasure of Roan, which I think the title itself gives you the sense of the type of book that this is.
I was just looking at the cover, so I was going to ask you what age group it was targeted towards. You said young adults?
Yeah, and I think there's some nuance that needs to be explained there. It deals with adult situations, so really late teens would be probably the sort of ideal reading age. There's 4-letter words in there and adult situations and those types of things. But it is definitely a young adult. And what's funny about that is when I was writing it, I didn't know that. I really didn't know until I went back and started the editing process to get it from ugly first draft to second draft. And I was looking at it, I was like, this is really it's a coming of age story about a young thief and him reconciling his relationship with his father. And the two of them are trapped in a dungeon together and they don't like one another. And I realized, I was like, yeah, no, this is more geared to, depending on where you're at in life. You could be as young as 14 reading this for sure. I wouldn't go younger than that. Otherwise parents are going to be mad at me. But I would say, yeah, late teens, that transition period when you start to enter adulthood and you start reflecting on your relationship with your parents, and then come to know them in a different light and understand them, which is obviously something that happens, I think, more perhaps in your 20s and 30s. But in the case of this novel, is something that hits this particular character pretty hard.
I know just from experience with talking to parents at book signings and other events and stuff, they're more. It sounds like the majority are more concerned or less concerned about swear words and more concerned about sexual content.
Yeah, there isn't any of that in there. Yeah. It's not in any way that kind of a book. There is a budding romance in there, but it's definitely PG and intentionally so, treated with respect. And what that looks like. But yeah, the 4-letter words and some of the violence, I think, but certainly not gendered based violence. I think it's more just, fantasy, sword and sorcery, action, adventure,
dungeon,
monsters. So you're gonna have some blood and guts, so not anything different than most fantasies that are out there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of what you expect in a fantasy book anymore, isn't it?
I think so. At least it feels that way to me. When I was growing up and I was reading Forgotten Realms and Dragonlance and those types of pocket books, I mean, they're wackadoodle full of violence, right? I suppose violence takes on a different tone though when you're lopping the head off of a goblin versus a human being, and I think that's pretty fair, right?
Or turning them to ice and tossing them along and watching them shatter on the floor.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. A good old cantrip might lead to that, and again, violence, but it doesn't feel that way in a fantasy, it's I guess it has its own interpretation of things.
How did you make the switch from horror to fantasy?
I think I've always written both, and a little bit of science fiction too, although that's not truly where my heart lies. What I was particularly interested, so I started writing when I was 12, and I really wanted to write a fantasy sword and sorcery adventure book. And I didn't have the skill in the craft to do it. And I didn't develop the skill in the craft until, in more recent years. And I came up with the concept for the novel, and it was more, I think, a place I wanted to go and visit and explore than anything. It wasn't that I was trying to nail the genre to prove I could write in the genre. I think maybe from false arrogance, I kind of just assumed I could because that's the genre I grew up with and still love and read to this day. So I felt comfortable being in that place, but as writing for me, especially genre fiction, has always been partially an escape to go to these places. The same reason why I play video games and read or play tabletop games is I love the feeling you get in your mind when your imagination takes over and you forget that you're in this reality and you go into the next. That's magic. And that is a very real thing. And I wanted to recreate that for myself and hopefully my readers. To create a fantasy world, to go in there, and something that was absolutely suffused with magic around every corner. So magic, treasure, mystery, humor, so there's definitely a bit of a Terry Pratchett Discworld kind of humor throughout the novel. So it is intended to be fun. And it's intended to be fast moving, like a Raymond Feist book. In the vein of some of his Rift War work from decades ago, which I also love. And yeah, that was where it was just at that point. I don't know how to explain it as an artist other than to say that was the adventure I wanted to go on and explore and tell when I started writing this. And then I went on to write another horror novel, which I'm trying to edit now. So I suspect that I'm going to just ratchet back and forth as time goes on.
You know, as you're
Serious.
telling your story, I'm thinking you sound like someone I know.
Oh,
You sound like me. You
well,
sound just like me. Like
you
I even
know,
started writing when I was 12, and it's just an
yeah,
escape and everything. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's a British Columbia thing, where and you would have experienced this too. I mean, different growing up
It
in
wasn't
Vancouver, but
a
it's a pretty rainy place with big trees, and if you look around, it looks like Middle Earth. Like it truly
kind of.
does.
Yeah.
And I always felt that British Columbia felt like that adventure, but that adventure, other people didn't see it. And so my fiction is modeled on or often directly based in British Columbia,
Same.
and as a
Same.
reflection of the place. That's really important to me as an artist. Place-based fiction is a big part of who I am. And I think there's a lot of people out there who come from that tradition of reader to writer, especially in our generation, who are kind of saying, because it's much more accessible now, where you don't have to be a stuffy PhD in literature to, write a book.
Or like highly lucky to be able to find somebody to represent you too. There's a lot of opportunities now.
There is. It's a lot more accessible, whether you go the self-pub route, whether you get an agent or you don't. Like the internet has truly democratized the ability to create art and get it out there and find audiences. And it's so easy, and I pile on too to complain about the vagrancies of the internet and stuff that it has resulted in. And I think those things are all very true. We could talk about that, but we shouldn't forget what it has done for art. And the sheer volume of good art that is out there that's coming out from people who didn't previously have a voice and are finding it now. That's something to celebrate, I think.
There's also a double-edged sword too, because there's a lot of, and maybe it's being weeded through now, but there was a lot of people that were self-publishing and they weren't going through the editing. They weren't going through proofreading. They were not producing something that was professionally professional level. So then it creates a stigma about independent authors. And so, yes, there's a lot of opportunity for those people who are really talented, who would otherwise never be able to share their voice. But then there's a lot of other things out there that are, giving a bad rap to that kind of
I agree. It's funny you bring that up. I was talking to a professor of mine yesterday about this very issue, and we were talking about publishing paths and I mean, he's been published for many decades longer than me, but he said, I think the stigma is finally starting to erode on self-publishing. He felt that it's really changed. I'm later to it, or more recent to it. I would agree. I still feel the driving force to make sure that whatever I published is really clean. Best quality I can get, hire a good cover artist, hire an editor, make sure that formatting is like, I really do that because I'm cognizant of the stigma. And so when I self-publish, which isn't always, but when I do, I really want to put a good product out there that is going to stand the test of time. But as I was saying to somebody recently, with self-publishing, one of the things to keep in mind is when you're creating, the moment up to the end of the creation is the artist. The moment that you step down the road of self-publishing, you're now a business person. And I think that's the thing you need to think about, is really be prepared to treat this like a business, to maybe tell the artist to take a back seat for a little while and think about your market, your audience, how seriously you're taking it, and how organized you are. And that is a very different skill set. And I can see the struggles for that as people try and feel their way through that. And I also see too, obviously my stuff is available on Amazon, and I'm willing to embrace that. And I think it's been good to me. But I do see some of the criticisms that people come out of it being an all-encompassing, monolith machine too. And so, you see both sides of it, but everything in life is a trade-off. And you just got to decide what's right for you when you create, and try and connect and find the audience, which is something I'm still trying to do, right? Is slowly build my audience, hopefully one piece of acceptable fiction at a time.
Yes. And I mean, whether you're traditionally published or indie published, you still have to tell the world you exist.
You do. And that's the thing. Like, I mean, if you end up with one of the big five, hopefully they're going to invest some money in you, and you're going to be on that track, and it will go. But that's not guaranteed, especially if you're new. You might get some marketing behind your stuff, but you probably won't get much. You certainly don't have any control over it. You don't have any control over where it goes, how it appears. You might not earn out on whatever your advance is, and if you can't get there, then you're unlikely to be picked up again, or less likely. And then when you get into smaller presses, smaller indie presses, which I've worked with and I really enjoy, you also have to be careful there too, because they're not all treated equal. They're not all the same level of professionalism. And the advance that you get paid is probably not going to be much, and there's not going to be a lot of marketing power behind it. And so when if you put on that business person hat and you look at it and you're like, yeah, okay, so they bought my stuff, so that's great. That's number one. You should never pay to get published unless you're the one doing it yourself. You're investing in yourself. But also just compare, what is their marketing plan? Like, well, what are they, are they going to put you out on tour, on signings? Are they going to get you into bookstores? Well, how much are they going to get you on bookstores? What does an earn out look like? And what does the future look like? And what kind of rights do I retain to this over time? Sure, we didn't want to get into the business side of things tonight.
It's part of it, though.
The artistry.
Right? Yeah,
but exactly. It's a big part of it. It is, and I do think that there are gads of artists out there right now struggling through this very thing.
Yes.
And need to see that others are too, and that there is some advice out there, and some of it is excellent, and some of it ain't. But you gotta learn as you go to separate the wheat from the chaff.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
One thing I wanted to circle back to, you were talking about it was fast paced. Is it more fast paced in a horror? Because a horror is usually really fast paced, is it? Or is it more plot based?
It depends. It's a good question. Fast paced, by what I mean is simple, direct language, shorter sentences, shorter chapter structure, more direct, third person, sort of limited omniscient. So I have 2 points of view in the Dungeoneers. And my goal in writing in that style, I'm proficient at it because I used to be a journalist. So I know what it means to write short, punchy sentences and move along. So that's helped me out. And that's what I like to read. But the goal always is just to get the reader to the next page. So really, I'm just trying to get you to the next page, but I'm also trying to give you enough breaks, whether that's scene breaks or shorter chapters, where you'll have the opportunity to set the book down. But you also know when you pick up the book that you don't have that sort of psychological weight of, oh my God, it's going to be an 80-page, chapter, and there's going to be entire pages that are a single paragraph. Now, to your question around horror, it depends on the horror. I have read some pretty intense horror that is slow, and that falls, I think, more into the category of the traditional Gothic. An example of that, one of my all-time favorite horror novels, but it's a slow burn, is Ghost Story by Peter Straub. It's a slow burn. It is not a fast-paced read. It is the nature of his writing style. And it builds into it. His other book, Floating Dragon, would be a good example of a very similar, slower burn, but excellent. But then if you were to compare against like his work with Stephen King in The Talisman or Black House or even Shadowland, now you're seeing a change in the style there, where shorter sentences, shorter chapters, so it's a little bit punchier. So when I say, that sort of moves quickly, I'm speaking more about the nature and structure of the language itself. To plot and character, I think those can be identical. You can have really in-depth or plot-driven or character-driven, or both coming together with the same emotional weight. But you can get at it you can get to those things through both more melodious or longer language or shorter language. So I don't think that those things are necessarily linked. I think they can be exclusive of one another, and you can still achieve the emotional weight of character development and plot while writing punchy or writing those more longer pieces. My opinion on that, for sure.
I mean, the beauty about fiction is that there are rules to writing, but you can break the rules for stylistic choices as long as you're consistent.
Yeah, consistent's key. And I think there's a good piece of advice I heard years and years ago on this, which is, yeah, you can break any rule that you want, but maybe know the rules and practice the rules before you break the rules, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't know the field of play, just like a sport, and you're in there just doing your own thing, wow, you are creating, you're making your life harder in honing your craft. It would be like trying to learn the piano without starting at the beginning and understanding the layout of the instrument itself and how it is structured. You need to learn within that, and then you can create your own, and you can break out of that, and you can try different things, right? Whereas if you just went to a piano and said, I'm just going to start hammering it, and eventually
Just like fiddlies.
Yeah, I think you can't do that. There's no question. I just think the pathway is more difficult, and you've got more chances of giving up on it. And so I always recommend with folks, like, if you're going to get into writing, I mean, just start writing in the beginning. Don't worry about the rules. Just start getting comfortable. Figure out if that's your thing. But if it is your thing and you like it, then yeah, go figure out the rules for the type of writing that you're particularly interested in, which may be fiction or it might be something else entirely. Figure those out and then break them, and have fun doing it.
I had a question. It's based on an article actually that I'm writing, and what it says is, and I'm going to ask your opinion on this, is so every storyteller needs to be able to write, but not every writer can become a storyteller. It takes some a bit of instinct that you need, even if your writing is perfect and you don't break any of the rules and everything is great. If it's lacking that essence, then you're not a storyteller, and it's not something that can be taught. Is that?
I think it can be taught, but I agree. I think you can know how to write without writing anything that is going to resonate with people. And I'll give you an example, right? So you could be a technical writer and you could write manuals for operating, I'll do this a throwback, a VCR, which probably anybody would need a technical manual these days to understand how to operate a VCR.
I still know how to set the clock.
yeah, there you go. But you know what I mean? And you can learn how to be a technical writer, and you can write, and you can write a manual, and that might be effective, but like, it's not going to resonate. It's not going to last. Nobody's going to read manuals because, they leave them a lasting impression. But if you want to write something that is going to emotionally connect with your readers, that is going to make them feel things that they were not expecting, that is going to give a lasting impression, or to go back to what we were talking about earlier, which is to escape this reality at all, to truly capture them and pull them into your world, then I think you do need an understanding of structure. I think you need an understanding of character development and character arcs, and conflict. And those were things that I struggled with for years. I like you. I started writing when I was 12, and I could put sentences together, but I couldn't. I didn't figure out conflict. And in fact, what ended up happening was all my characters were always making good decisions, and like, that doesn't lead to conflict. And there's no story without conflict. And so when you start studying, and this is the part where I think you can learn it, when you start studying story structure, character development, but even things like the hero's journey, if you start to dive into mythology and those stories, those can be such useful structures. Or the 7-point story structure, or what William Kenauer talks about in short fiction around having a shattering moment in there. When you, start to pay attention to those structures and you say, oh, that's a tool. I understand that tool. I've learned that tool. I can now employ that tool. I'm going to start testing how I can employ that tool in my craft. You just leveled up in a big way. So I think it can be taught. It's arduous. You have to know what to look for. But I think, again, back to the analogy of the piano, if you're not teaching yourself to read the music, it's gonna be harder for you. And I think in fiction, if you're writing fiction or poetry, you have to teach yourself to read the music, and that is the structure, what its intent is, and behind it. Otherwise, you may stumble upon it or have a natural knack for it and can do it. But there's so many people out there who could be writing amazing fiction who feel like they couldn't be. But if they figured out those few things, yeah, they could crack out something really, really good, really meaningful. It is something you can learn to do. There are people, though, who have natural talent, who can pick these things up instinctually and just nail it. And of course, you know, a good example of that was the author of the Outsiders. I think she was 17 when she wrote that novel and was published, and of course, it's still taught in high school to this day, I think, all over North America, right? And so some people, they can just do that, and bully for them. I'm not one of them. I had to learn it.
Now, when you talk about all this structure, are you the type of person that when you're going to write a book, you sit down and journal, I'm going to start here, and then by chapter 5, I'm going to be, you don't do any of that?
No, great question. So I often see this referred to in the writing community as, are you a plotter or are you a pantser? I'm a pantser, which means I do it by the seat of my pants. And the reason being is, I think it must be the ADHD. If I plot this thing out and like I write, like it's going to be 40 chapters and I write 1,000 words per chapter on what's going to happen in each chapter, by the time I get to the 40,000 words done, I've got a novel already that's in just a layout. I don't want to write this thing anymore. I'm not interested in it. I know what happens. So I have a problem, which is that I want to go on the adventure and discover the story. I want to be the first one to do it. And so I'm a pantser. And so where I begin is usually with an image, an idea, and then I start to chase that down. Sometimes it's a sentence or two. And what I will find is that I'll start a lot of things, I think like most writers, and some things stick. Some things you get 10, 15,000 words into and you're like, yeah, I've lost it. I don't know where this, I can't figure it out. And then you shelve it. You don't erase it, you just shelve it. Maybe you come back to it later. And then other things like the Dungeoneers or my first novella, Wolf at the Door, it just clicks and you figure it out. What I will say though, Glenn, is that when I get to the last third, I plot it out. At that point, because at that point I'm like, oh, okay, I got to figure out how to wrap this up, and do it in a timely way, and I got to do it in a way that makes sense. I hate the editing process, so as I'm going, I am trying to make the prose as clean as possible and structured well. And so that helps me when I get to that last third, is I'll start sitting down and say, okay, chapter by chapter, this chapter is going to be this point of view. It's going to happen here. This is what happens. And I'm trying to line things up. Part of that is that I have a tendency in my fiction to have multiple points of view and also play with time. And so when I'm playing with time, this is the OCD in me. I love the idea of things just snapping together in a way that just feels like you've organized your desk in your office. Everything has a place. And I love that when I start to see an author or a television writer or a film writer who all these disparate pieces, and you're wondering, how's this all going to come together? And then it just starts to fit as you get together, and you're like, oh, this was a magic trick. The whole thing was a magic trick all the way along. You got me, and now I'm seeing you roll it out, and I'm along for the ride. So I'm trying to often do the same thing.
Okay. Now, do you, with your characters, do you know where they're going, or do you let them, and I know I'm probably saying this wrong, but do your characters take a life of their own and they start basically talking back to you and saying, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm doing this.
Yeah, for sure. I don't force it. I don't force them. And I've struggled with that at times, because, like there's times where I'm like, I've got a really clear picture of who this person is. And I know where they're going, and it's easy. And it's almost like we get along. So like, I know where you're going. I know the decisions you're going to make, whether I agree with them or not, but we'll be fine. Then there'll be other characters that come in, and I think that they're maybe a sub character in the beginning. And then they start to show up and make their own, it feels like they're making their own decisions. Yep. And I love that. And I love to buy into the idea and the magic of that. Again, that's part of the escape and the adventure that is compelling for me as a writer, is to discover, or at least lead myself to believe I'm discovering what they're showing me. The key for me is always, as they're making decisions, is it enhancing the story and the direction I think that it's going, or am I going way off base here into some other, and it's going to blow everything apart? And if it's not enhancing and it's taking us down another direction, I might entertain it. It might be a good direction, but now my spidey sense is going off because I'm like, whoa, this is going in a different. Okay, how did I get here? Sometimes I've had to go back multiple chapters and say, oh, okay, that's why I got there. That of course, this led to that, and then this, then that, therefore this, and therefore that. And so sometimes I've had to go back and trace it. And the Dungeoneers was like that. I struggled for 2 years. I had the first 3 chapters, and they're almost word for word published what they were when I wrote them. I really, really liked them. But the characters kept going in one direction when they got down in the dungeon, and it just wasn't going anywhere. Like I couldn't figure out, where does this go? And I kid you not, I literally just turned them around and had them face the other direction and asked the question, what is in that direction? What compels them to go in that direction? What are they running to? What are they running from? And then the rest of the novel was history. And that was it. But it took me 2 years to learn that lesson. But sometimes it is that simple. But it was this retracing my steps constantly until I figured it out.
But you weren't stuck for 2 years, though, were you?
Yeah, I was. Yeah,
really?
It was weird. It's stuck in that story. So I'd written those 3 chapters, and then a few other chapters on top of it that just weren't really working. And so I set it aside for a while, and I went back to horror. And I wrote a bunch of short stories and wrote my novella and published it, and got short stories sold and out there. And then I came back to this other one, and I said, okay, I think I've kind of figured this out, that they need to go in the other direction. And from that point on, I wrote pretty much the whole thing in a month. Yes. And part of it was that it was November. So I was doing a NaNoWriMo and trying to get that 50,000 words out. I was challenging myself. So I did set a goal that forced some discipline. But I also had figured out, and my craft was better because I had set it aside and gone and worked in short stories for a while. And short stories, I have found, are hard as heck, really, really tough to write. But they teach you so much about story structure that writing at length you can often ignore. It's easy to put 50. I won't say it's easy, but it is easier to let a story get away from you 50, 70,000 words and feel like you're making progress and it's all adding up and it's all working. But there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that actually doesn't work and you don't know it. Whereas a short story, if you're trying to keep something to 5,000 words or less, you've got to be really judicious with your structure and think that through. And so when I am writing short fiction, back to your previous question, I structure. I get the idea, then I structure, because I know me. And I will insert a scene and do this, and then what was supposed to be 5,000 words is suddenly 10 or 15,000.
Did you said you had a background in journalism?
Yeah. So
did that
my
help
undergrad,
you to write short stories?
No, to be honest with you. So I started writing when I was 12. I always wanted to be a novelist, and then you get to late teens, you get out of high school, and you're like, I better get a job, and so I can pay the rent. And I decided that, I'd go into journalism because I love to write. I could get paid to write. And I got a degree. And the idea was that it would lead me towards a publishing career in fiction. It doesn't do that at all. At least it doesn't in Canada. It might be different in the States, especially for genre fiction. So anyway, I was in a different career, in a different place in my life by the time I got back to fiction. But I will say, journalism, it taught me to get comfortable with rejection and criticism, because that's an everyday thing. It got me really comfortable working with an editor. It taught me copy editing. It taught me how to get disciplined and pump out content, even when you're not terribly excited about it, and meet deadlines. And those things are skills that I think are definitely part of my success. That discipline around it, even when you're not feeling it, to just sit down and get a few sentences out, or a paragraph or a page or whatever, commit yourself to it, even if it sucks, really, really was key for me sticking with writing fiction. But when I eventually did get back to it, I had to do courses myself. I had to do a lot of reading, studying, practicing to figure out structure of conflict and character development, story arcs, and those types of things. Really pay attention and do close reading of what I was reading for pleasure in my own time to see how stories were structured instead of just sort of reading to get away from it. And that eventually helped me actually write fiction. So there's some aspects of journalism, being a print journalist, that were definitely helpful, and some that did not at all lead in the direction that I originally hoped. But yeah, such is life.
What about like the word economy? Because I'm sure as a journalist that you can't just, let the words fly, and it would help you for word economy when it comes to novellas.
It does. Yeah, it certainly does. I mean, yeah, I used to have a job when I was in Vancouver where I would get into the newsroom at 7:00 in the morning, or sometimes a little bit earlier. The Toronto Stock Exchange at that point in time had already been open for a bit, and I was a business journalist, and we had to pump out 3 stories within an hour, and based on what was going on in the exchange or the market that day, which was your richest source of news, but it was really complex business stuff. Like, you had to understand how the market worked. So within an hour, you would get in and you'd comb through whatever releases were coming out on the market, maybe might have come out of government. You pick stuff that you think met your audience. You go into it, but you can't regurgitate a press release. So you have to actually understand the material, get an interview, hopefully 2, get those done and buried, or find some analysis that had already been released on it, and then package that up into 200 to 300 word stories, and then submit to the editor for publication by 8 a.m. And so that really taught me the thresher of writing in a newsroom. Covering courts was the same way. I covered BC Supreme Court for a while down on Robson Street, and you'd go down to the courthouse 3 times a week, and you would go through stacks that were 2 feet high of all the civil suits. You had to read every one of them and figure out which ones of them are newsworthy, that my readers might be interested on, who's suing who, record all the basics, and then you would pick one a week that was actually worth a story, and you chase it. And occasionally you'd come across something that was an even bigger one. But yeah, you always knew, and you'd say to your editor, you'd be like, hey, I want to do a story on this mining project or this forestry project or whatever's going on. That was my beat. And you'd be like, okay, I got a half a page for you. And I need a photo. And okay, so I've got 450 words max. So I've got 450 words, and I've got 2 to 3 interviews, and to try and strike some balance in whatever this issue is, you got to get really tight, really, really tight.
Yeah, it definitely takes the creativity out of writing, doesn't it? Like the fun.
It can. Yeah, I was fortunate enough that I had an editor and a publisher that were supportive of longer pieces, and I started doing investigative work and longer news features. So we would do multi-part series, 1,000 to 1,500 word stories that would appear, 1 a week over 4 weeks or something like that. And you could really get in depth. But the research always far outweighed what was actually ended up on the page. You'd months and months of research, evenings and weekends, what we used to call the Sprint Plus plan, because evenings and weekends were free. That's going back 20 years. And then you would boil it down to that 1,000, 1,500 words in a news story. And so when you get to fiction now, and you're like, hey, short stories, 5,000 words. Well, that seems like a lot of space, but not really. Not when you're trying to create emotional weight and conflict and consequence. And it's really not much. And I've never tried my hand at flash fiction. I know some people are really, really good at it, but I look at that and I'm like, that's a whole other thing. I maybe one day I will try and learn that craft. I think it would be useful for longer fiction. But man, I haven't even tackled or wanted to tackle trying to figure that out yet.
Is there a genre you've tried 2 now? Is there another genre you'd like to try in the near future, or maybe down the road?
No. Every once in a while, believe it or not, every once in a while, I get an idea that I'd love to write a romance. I really would. And somebody told me once, maybe this is why I have the idea in my head, that, romance and horror are actually not that far apart. When you think about some of the what the emotional anchors are around fear and empathy, and obviously love. You need those things, I think, in both genres. They need to be present. Now, they're displayed and played differently, but they're very similar. But I was raised by my mom. I grew up on rom-coms, and so I am a romantic at heart. And so there's a part of me that maybe under a nom de plume at some point would like to try a Harlequin super romance structure and see where I could get.
You know, the guest last week said the same thing. That,
Oh, really?
He would like to dip his toe into romance. So
Yeah.
it must be a thing.
Well, it sells a lot.
There's a
You can figure
lot
it
of
out.
romance out
And,
there, yeah.
And I would have no problem at all if at some point in my life, despite all of my passion for horror and fantasy, if I tried my hand at it, I wrote something half decent, and I sold 1 million copies, and that's what I became known for. Joel McKay, the romance writer. I'd be like, yeah, okay, that's fine. I guess there you go.
You're not
All
going to
good.
use a pen name for that.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess we'll see if I ever get there, right?
We'll just have to like rearrange your letters and see if there's an anagram out there.
An anagram in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
You were talking about writing short stories, and you reminded me something that, and you're probably going to, you said spidey senses earlier, but a comic book writer, they've told me, do you know how hard it is? We get this big, great idea, and these guys are going to spread this out over 10 issues, but I got to make this in just a couple hundred words. And I had never thought about it, but they were saying it's actually harder to do the short story than it is to do the long story. And I would have thought it would have been the opposite. And then with a comic book, you've got to say to your artist, I need you to draw him going pow and this guy hit the, so,
Yeah, there's even more restriction there.
Yeah, I've wondered about that too. I mean, I've never tried my hand at comic book writing, but it strikes me that on the one side, you got to get the art really right, because it goes back to this: a picture speaks 1,000 words. So the picture has to be right, so you don't have to speak the words. But then you need to figure out what words need to be spoken, and yeah, to your point, like it's not going to be many. Like it's going to be a couple dozen per box, right? That and then you've got to carry it along. And then if you think about an issue of a comic book, what are they, 30, 40 pages, maybe? So like, how do you then structure that so that you have, your beginning, your middle, your end with some type of a climax, an emotional transition, and then obviously a cliffhanger at the end in order to keep you, because they're serialized, to keep you writing the next one. That is an art form all on its own. Not something I've tried my hand at, but to your point, writing short fiction is I have found more difficult than long fiction, because there's not as much room for error, to be really plain about it. But I think it's really worthwhile to, if you want to write long fiction, learn to write short fiction. And I think that I think that if you do one, you'll end up writing novellas, or you'll see more of them, because you get, to your point around being really, cautious, economic with the number of words that you have, get really good at short fiction. You now can probably deliver a longer story that has the emotional effect of a novel in 120 pages. And there you are. You have a novella.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I think all these things are difficult. Not to say novels are easy. They are not. Really hard. But they have their own. Each thing has its own challenges, I think.
Mm-hmm. I had somebody, I think it was this morning actually, that was comparing comic book writing, like, because there's a lot of books that are made into comics, to being similar to writing a script, because there's very little narrative. It's all dialogue. Most of it's dialogue, and you have to get down to like the most important scenes.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't you? I have tried my hand at screenwriting. I've got a script I'm working on just for funsies right now. But it's I found I really enjoy it because I love writing dialogue. But what was interesting to me as I've gone through it is, what type of exposition do you put in each scene to translate? Now, again, a script strikes me as, not being a screenplayer, but it strikes me as, here is the roadmap to the filmmaker. So I have written this story. Here is your roadmap. You are the director. You now need to figure out how this is going to look, who you're going to hire to act it. Then the talent needs to figure out how they're going to interpret that language and bring life to it. That is a whole team effort in adapting to for screen. That fascinates me, is not my background, is something I would love to be exposed more to as I go along. But it is also, I think there's an element to that of the release of control. Whereas with a novel or a short story, that's all it's ever going to be. If somebody decides to adapt it, well, then they've got to write the screenplay, or they got to pay you to write the screenplay or the treatment or whatever it is. Whereas with the film itself and the screenplay, you got to let go, and somebody else has got to bring their artistic vision to it. Yeah,
that's hard for a creator too. Just let go. I mean, I know it. I equate it to like selling my children.
Yeah,
I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I don't mind if the check is big enough. Have at her.
I suppose if it is,
Yeah, I also.
Not my kids. I wouldn't sell my kids.
Yeah, no, and I would not. I'm a parent too. I love my kids. I see what you're saying, though. I see what you're saying. I think you do have to cross the valley of emotional wreckage in order to fully let go of it. Because I do think if you go down that road, you have to let go. Because if you sell and then you are trying to control or manage, or you end up unhappy with the end product, well, that wasn't really up to you anyway. So, that was out of your control. That's an externality. All you can control is how you react to that. If somebody were to take the Dungeoneers and say, hey, Joel, we want to pay you this and make this into a movie, but we don't want you to have any part of it, I'd be like, okay, well, have at her. I would detach myself from any emotional expectation that I'm going to like it. In fact, I'll just assume I'm not going to like it. And then hopefully I will be pleasantly surprised. It's a bit of the same approach I take to a new Star Wars movie. I'm going to assume I'm not going to like it, because I learned this lesson with The Phantom Menace in 1999, as many of us did. I was like, this is going to be the best ever. Like, it's so awesome. Disappointed. And I've learned in later years to just be like, maybe it'll be fine. We'll see.
Just let it go. Just
let it go. Yeah, let it go.
So
one of the go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, because you write a lot of like dark and horror and those kind of themes and stuff. If you stripped away everything, what are your stories really about?
I think that is a great question.
Sorry.
It is the answer is actually sort of top of mind because I'm just wrapping up my master's in literature, and my thesis is entirely about this. Earlier when I was talking about place-based fiction, I would say my stories are really two things, whether it's short fiction or long fiction. The first and foremost thing is I'm really trying to appeal to the reader and give them something they can enjoy. So I'm really after the entertainment aspect of it. That's it. But there is a second component of this that if you want to read through things, where I am trying to champion and promote, particularly northern British Columbia, but British Columbia as a literary locale, and advance the history of this place so that people in the place, but also outside of the place, see that British Columbia is more than just space. Empty Canadian wilderness space. That is a problem in our country, where we continue to see Canada, and I don't want to pick on Americans because we are just as guilty of this in Canada, that if you're from Vancouver or Calgary or Toronto or Montreal, anywhere outside of there, it doesn't matter. That's just a vast open wilderness. No one lives up there, or they live in igloos. that is a fundamental misunderstanding of the country and its history, which is as rich in the northern parts of the provinces and the territories as it is in the metropolitan areas. We are doing ourselves a disservice. We're not honoring our history. And I think it is a contributing factor to our continual struggle with what is the Canadian identity and our own sovereignty, which are very present conversations right now, as our sovereignty has been threatened by our neighbors to the south. I think the Americans understand. Yeah, I think they understand this too, in that the flyover states, if you live on either coast, the flyover states are often seen as space, not place, or at least a place that you don't want to go to. And we got a bit of that in Canada. So there is an underlying goal here in all of my literature. A friend of mine described it almost as an activist bent. But I've never seen myself that way. I don't think he's wrong. Of saying, no, this is place. This is the place. It's got a dark and heinous history. You would know, from being from the Upper Skeena and the conditions in some of those communities, both beautiful and incredible, but also extraordinarily depressed. And so one of the things you'll see in my fiction continually is what I describe as the industrial Gothic, which is industry towns, single employer towns that are often in a vast wilderness, that become semi-ghost towns when that employer shuts up shop, whether it's a mill or a mine or a gas plant or whatever it is, and the consequences on the people of that. And so you see that in these places. And so I'm trying almost to fill in the space with my version of place. And I'm hoping over time that other Canadian writers and artists are going to do the same thing in their own way. And that is, to answer your question, the big, ugly, hairy, audacious goal in all this. But I'm perfectly happy if people just enjoy the ride.
We have those areas here called Kentucky and West Virginia.
Yeah. My parents live in Idaho, and so there's one, right? I've talked to so many. I've got family in Texas. I got family in North Carolina, Idaho, and Washington. The ones who are in North Carolina or Texas, even, or because they're in Houston or in Seattle area, kind of look down their noses a little bit at those who are in those flyover states. Just the same thing happens here. If you're from Vancouver and I go down there and I say, well, I'm from Prince George, you're like, where the hell is that? Isn't that? Don't you get 10 months of winter there? And I say, well, no, it's only 6.
Small difference.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
I would encourage anyone to read the Vice President's book about the Appalachia, because
I've read it.
He nailed a lot of it. Having worked here as a paramedic in the South, he really did. And I'm not trying to make a political thing out of it. He nailed a lot of it.
I found the same thing, and I'm glad you brought that up. And I want to divorce the politics, which I think is what you're trying to do from the art in the book itself. I have no opinion on the politics. I'm Canadian. But the book itself, what I found when I read that was like, wow, this sounds like a lot of places in northern BC. Same challenges and same type of people, same type of family structure, same struggles. It really resonated in that way of what the rural conditions are in post-industrial places in North America. I think he nailed it. And it underwrote his success, because those, and this is the political statement, the fact that those places have been forgotten about in Canada and the United States for the last 2 generations is why we're having the problems that we're having. And if you cannot reconcile the relationship between the metropolitan areas where there's development and wealth and growth, that is from the rural areas where we are being turned into islands of poverty that we can't escape because we can't afford. Even if we sold our houses, we wouldn't have enough to even put a down payment on a house in these big cities. If a government can't reconcile that problem, well, that's your division, right? And what I find, and this gets back to your question, Jen, that is kind of what I'm trying to point out to people, that the solution for the rural area is actually also the solution for the metropolitan area. These things are not, we have delinked them. in a post-industrial state, but they need to come back together, and a solution for one will create a solution for the other, because the urban place is unaffordable. It's unaffordable. Yes. You can't get medical care. You can't, it's hard to get ahead. It's hard to afford anything more than a coffee. And then there's rural areas that are super affordable, but don't have as many jobs, don't have as many people, all those things. Well, it's like Joey on Friends said, why don't you put your hands together? Right? There's your solution.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, we can't keep you all night. And I do have a question I'm dying to ask. We ask all of our guests, now, first off, do you believe in any ghosts, Bigfoot, anything like that? And if so, have you ever had any paranormal experiences?
I am open to the supernatural. I have had, so about 11 years ago, I was in New Brunswick, which is just north of Maine. And it was a very long day. And I was with a group of people, and we stayed at this old mansion overnight, which had been turned into a hotel. And I was just toast. And middle of the night, I woke up to somebody walking through my room. And so I get up and I'm looking around, and there's no one there. And I check, and I'm kind of sort of spooked out about the whole thing. And I'm like, I guess I'm just overtired, jet lagged, whatever it is. Went back to bed. In the morning, I get up, I go down for breakfast, and some of the people I'm there with, one of the ladies was saying, and I knew nothing about this hotel before I got there, and I think you know where this is going. And one of the ladies, which is in a different room, she said she woke up in the middle of the night and she felt somebody sitting on her legs. And the waitress who was serving breakfast happened to overhear it. She said, "Oh yeah, that's so-and-so. He haunts that floor." And I was like, oh. Yeah. And to this day, like, there's a part of me, the logical side of me, that's like, I was just tired, and like I dreamt it, and it's not a thing. But I don't know. It was pretty odd.
Okay. You never know.
So, yeah. I think I will end with this thought. One last thought. There's more about the universe we don't know than we know. So,
absolutely.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, no, the last thought is we need you to tell everyone, including our Australian audience, and it will be in show notes, where they can find you. They can find your stuff if they want to get in touch with you, anything like that.
Well, two things. First, shout out to all of my American friends, one of the greatest countries on the planet. Love you, all of you. And I know it's a tough time, but the United States is fantastic, as is Canada. We will get through this. And also a shout out to my brothers and sisters from down under in Australia, which is really Canada, but with better temperatures, but more things that will kill you. You can find my fiction at www.joelmckay.ca. That's my website. Hop on there, all the links to buy, or hop on Amazon. If you happen to be in beautiful Prince George or Cornell, go into Books and Company. They stock my stuff, and you can find it there as well.
All right. All of that will be in the show notes, probably not tonight. Maybe tomorrow. So, but I will get it in there if anybody wants to get in touch with you and get your stuff, which that's the whole purpose of this. Now, you have to promise us one thing, aside from the beautiful Jen there, you will come back and see us. So
anytime.
Good deal. Well, thank you for allowing us to have a little bit of your time.
No, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate it. Both of you take care.
All right.
You too.
Right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We say this every week. It goes so quick. It goes so quick.
I'm so happy to finally meet somebody who knew the town that I'm born in, because it's not even on the map. There's only about 300 people.
Well, I can relate. I mean, Knoxville's a big town, but it's not a big town on the same part. So when you're like, well, I'm from over here. When you hear somebody from your side of the county, you're like, hey. So yeah. I get it.
Well,
I get it. So
the place where I was born is literally called a hamlet, or the village of. It's divided. It's not even a full town. It's not even a town. It's not even enough people.
Wow. All right. Well, everybody hang on. We have another guest tonight. I've got to push a button here. Stay tuned for hour 2 of the Sportcat Show.
Broadcasting across Australia on Dare Media Group radio stations, this is the Sportcat Show, uncovering secret chapters, strange encounters,
and the occasional technical mishap.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Hour 2 of the Sportcat Show. It's me and Jen tonight, as always, and we have two guests. Tonight is no exception. We're going to switch it up a little bit. Patrick, well, he's written everything from sports to about animals, and so let's bring Patrick out here and let him tell us about himself. Hey, Patrick, how are you?
Hey, how are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
Thanks for being here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then let's talk about your works.
All right. Well, my name is Patrick Sangermino. I'm a retired journalist now. I spent 40 years in the business. I was a sports writer for a lot of years. Moved over to the news side. They call the sports department of a newspaper the toy store. So you kind of grow up and put away those toys, and became a news columnist, and kind of got to write about whatever I wanted at that point, which was a lot of fun, and found some new toys to play with, actually. And retired in 2024. Spent most of my career in the Midwest, but moved back to California, where I am from, San Francisco, and here I am.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, when you were doing the journalist side, I read in some of your bio, you were there during the earthquake at the World Series.
Yeah, that was a shaking moment. Were you alive for that?
Yeah. I was watching it on TV. So,
all right. Yeah, it was an interesting moment. I was a young reporter at that time, and yeah, when you're from California, an earthquake, it happens, and then you put it aside and you look around and you see all these other people who are freaking out, but you start saying, okay, let's play ball. And then you don't realize that a bridge had collapsed and the city was on fire. And this was far more serious than we thought it was. It just felt like the ground shook a little bit.
Yeah, I always commend the sports reporters that transition from, we're talking about a game, to now we're talking about life and death. And I'll relate this to something more recent. The Buffalo Bills player that got hit on the field and went into cardiac arrest. Those guys with ESPN did an amazing job. I'm a paramedic. They did an amazing job telling I knew what was going on, but telling the world what was going on, what was happening, and trying to restore a little bit of calm, and then figure out, are we really going to play a game tonight?
I've always football is such an interesting game in that regard. And I got to cover the NFL for 8 years, and I always wondered, I watched players get bigger, faster, stronger. And with the size and speed of these guys, the collisions are crazy. And and I've always wondered, is it just a matter of time before someone gets killed on a field? And some say we did see it that night and they just brought him back to life. So You're the paramedic, this far more than I do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He was dead. If it hadn't been for quick thinking staff and with technology now with AEDs, early access to CPR and AED saved his life.
Yes.
Plus he was in excellent peak physical health. So
exactly.
That helped a lot too. But
you look at an incident like that and you go, what would have happened if this man had died on the football field? And what America lives in, for lack of a better word, dies for its football every Sunday and Saturday in college towns. What would the appetite be for football if you watched a young man die on national TV? And, I think there's a great story there that I'm waiting for someone to write.
I like that you're saying, like, because I've thought the same thing too, is they're getting bigger and they're getting more muscular and stuff. That doesn't change the size of their bones. It doesn't change their organs. It's just padding.
Yes. Yeah. And the NFL has a problem right now that hasn't even come down the pike with the with the whole CTE issue and concussions and you know the helmet does not protect you from a concussion because everything happens inside your head. It's your brain sloshing around against your skull. So there's really no way to legislate safety into a game that's not very safe at all. So we'll see where we go from here.
It's going to be interesting. I agree.
Yes.
Are you guys football fans now?
I grew up a football fan. Yeah.
Okay.
We have more hockey, I think, than anything up here.
All right. And that's the same thing. I mean, we're the collisions there. You know, hockey is just so much.
Rugby, I think, is actually oddly enough, rugby, I think, is Canada's national sport, but everybody knows hockey. So, but yeah, it's like the saying: you go to a fight and a hockey game breaks out. There are a lot of things going on that I used to X-ray some of them after the fact.
You know, the rugby part of it is rather interesting because it, if you really wanted to make football safer, you would get rid of the helmets because people would be less prone to stick their heads into these things, and
True.
and
they're hard to cut off too. To after the fact, if they get injured, they're very difficult to remove.
That's what I've heard. Yes.
There's a tool. So actually,
not in my department, there wasn't.
Well, on the ambulance there was.
Wow, you guys are scaring me right now. All right.
Yeah, well, just wear matching underwear if you go out and your paramedic will see you.
There you go.
So what changed to get you to writing about dogs, animals?
No. This is the title of the book is a metaphor.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely
okay.
a metaphor. I'll tell you the whole story. So the book
that was on page 2 of my notes. Sorry.
So the book is about the book is about the downturn in the newspaper industry through the eyes of a sports columnist who's driving to work one day expecting to be the latest casualty in a mass layoff.
Yeah.
And the story takes place over a single day, but flashes back over his life. Now, for the title of the book, this is you'll like this one a lot. When I was in high school, I was sweet talking a girl one day, and a girl who would never give me the time of day, but yet this day she happened to be a little bit receptive to my advances. I don't know. Maybe showering helped at that point in my life or something. But here I was having a nice conversation with this girl, and the bell rings, and it's time to go to class. And I look across the hallway to where I'm supposed to be, and the teacher is eyeballing me. And I'm thinking, you know what? I have been waiting all year to talk to this girl. I'm going to be a little bit late. And so I walked into his class about 10 minutes late, finally relenting, saying, I've got to get to class. And I said, sorry, I was talking to someone. And he looked at me and he said, dogs chase cars, but they can't drive them. And and
I love that. That's actually funny.
So that became kind of a metaphor for life. What happens when you chase something all your life and you finally catch it? What happens when your goals are finally achieved? Do you have what it takes to stay in, to keep it and to maintain it and to nurture it to where it needs to be? So more of a metaphor. Now, I like dogs. I just don't know enough to write about them.
I swear to God, I did read this, but we did have an author that wrote about her dogs, and I think it's on the way. I apologize. No, don't let me off the hook. I screwed up. So,
man, if that's the worst you do, we're going to be just fine.
Yeah, as long as it
I can't. I love your analogy, and I can't help but think like. We used to have this little Shih Tzu little poodle mix. It was only about this big, and he come out of the car, and our neighbors had a cat, and he just rub, and he's running towards his cat, and his cat just stands there and looks at him. So he gets up to the cat, and then he's like, "Okay, now what?"
Yeah.
Just turns and walks away. I don't know that analogy kind of fits that image. So it's just like, yeah, what do you do when you catch it?
Exactly.
It's like, well, I caught it, but
yeah, you catch up to the car. The dog ain't going to drive that thing.
No, no. So go ahead, Jen. I'm sorry, I screwed up. I'll let you talk. You're more important than me. So
I hardly. So, there was a time, and was this what spawned your idea for this story? Is kind of your a little bit of disillusionment with the journalism industry?
I watched. First of all, have you tried to buy a newspaper lately?
No, I tend to watch it on my phone.
Exactly. That's how most people
Yeah.
are getting their news right now, and a newspaper is hard to come by, which is kind of sad for my generation because we grew up. I mean, I delivered papers when I was 10 years old, and
I did too. Yeah.
they showed up at your doorstep every day, and there was something magical about that. A
Hmm.
newspaper had a very preferred place in most households, or and gradually that started to change with the advent of the internet,
Hmm.
and I think owners of the newspaper owners, publishers, they were very arrogant about this great standing they had in society, where no matter what they did, the paper was always going to show up at the doorstep. And so the internet comes down the pike, and all of a sudden they say, rather than investing in this technology, they decided that, oh, this is a fad, it's going to go away. Big mistake, because the internet's not going away. We know that now.
Yeah.
Um, so along the line, they lost a whole lot of advertising along the way. Car ads, real estate ads, they all went by way of the internet because you could get them on there instantly and you could get better results, reach far more people. So all of a sudden you're losing money. So now you're going through these mass layoffs. And I watched the advent of the book came about as I watched. I was working in Kansas City, and our competing paper, the Kansas City Star, had a massive layoff, and I watched some really good friends um, who I competed with every day for stories lose their jobs, and it was just sad to me. I was like, wow, if that guy can lose a job, are any of us really safe? And what is the future of our business? Wrote down a few notes, and I put it away for about 7 years, and all of a sudden had an opportunity, found those notes, and I said, you know what, it's time to start writing this thing, and just just started writing, and lo and behold, it came together, and I had a first draft in about 9 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's quick.
Yeah.
not bad. But you think in the newspaper business, you write something, you don't call it a first draft. It goes to the editor, and it gets read up 2 or 3 times by people, and it's about a 15-20 minute processing. You think you're done with, they might find a hole there or something. So I'm thinking I've written a first draft, and I'm going to get it. I hired an editor, and he looked through it, and
Did
I
you get
said,
it
okay,
back with all the red ink?
yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of red ink, but it was, all right, are you ready to start working now? He goes, I like what I've read, but are you ready to start working? The second draft is where the work begins.
Hmm.
Because now you have a foundation, and now it's a matter of reassembling it almost. He wanted chapters moved. He wanted um, parts that he really liked. He wanted those to be enhanced more. He wanted them to be written more fully. Um, and so, with all of that, when you start changing things around, you start talking about transitions and everything. And then you start wondering. I wrote it very chronologically to start with, and I came to realize when I got done, it jumped around from past to present, present to past, and you sit there and you go, wow, are people going to be able to follow this? And he promised me they would, and lo and behold, they did. But I'm sure it was very confusing to readers. The first few graphs where they're going, okay, we're figuring out the time frame we were in, present day to past. And it just took a while for them to get on. But once they did, they figured it out.
How did it feel with us people, though, cutting your stuff up? I mean, that's your baby. You put your time and energy into it. How does that
You
make
know,
you
I had a great editor, and I had a lot of respect for him because he's edited a couple of New York Times bestsellers. So I went in with a whole lot of respect and also a humbleness that I was in a completely new genre for me. Like I said, I was in the newspaper industry for 40 years. So now here I am in something completely different. Sure, the um, writing is writing, but um, I was a newbie when it came to writing a novel, and I was really reluctant to when I tracked him down. I said I wrote something, and I'm very reluctant to call it a novel because I don't think I'm worthy to call something a novel at this point. And he read it, and he said, "You wrote a novel, and you are an author." And I still am reluctant to use those phrases just because it seemed a little pretentious to me at the time.
I know it's surreal, right? When you publish for the first time, and I know the feeling like it's almost like an adrenaline rush. Everything's all set up, and then you press enter, and it goes into the world.
Yes, and but seeing it for the first time, holding it in my hand with my name on it, there
Yep.
is I don't know how to explain it, but it was one of those truly amazing feelings. And being around my family as it, we pulled it out of the box, and everyone in the room is crying, and just these tears of joy, and I am like just overwhelmed by it all. It was a very special moment, and it's something I will never forget, and it's something that while I'm reluctant to call it a novel or myself an author, it's something I'm very proud of.
Mm-hmm.
should be?
Yeah. You could make a shadow box display, put it on your wall. I saw
Well,
something like that on Pinterest, and I was like, it was like a thicker frame, and you could do like a shadow thing of your first book and artwork, or just take the cover off of one.
yeah, you see, you've got all these ideas for me. Like I had no idea what to do. My copy is right now under my bed. Truth be known, but
Nice.
yeah. So I don't know, and I don't know why, but that's where it is. But my
So,
friends,
oh, go ahead.
I know a lot of people who've read it, and I've signed a bunch of copies, which is a really interesting.
It
Um,
is the first time you do that. Yeah.
yes, and you have no idea what to write. It. Remember in high school signing someone's yearbook and trying to come up with something pithy. You know,
Yeah.
you had to come up with something pithy for their book, and you had to let them know that you knew them somehow. So you had to make something up. So anyway, it was it's fun. It's This whole experience has been great, and I think I think it's a really interesting book. It's the sports stories are real. They're actual games I've covered over the years. The story of the newspaper itself is fictional, and the people I worked with are fictional. So it's kind of this hodgepodge of suspended reality in many ways, but it's also a story of relationships, and I think if when I talk to people in the industry who've read it, they said you wrote the quintessential book about the need for striking a balance between your home life and your work life, because it's a story about relationships and the ones that you often take for granted while you're off working and away from home, and not really realizing that there are people waiting for you at home, but you're so wrapped up in your work, and you're chasing the dog, chasing the car, as it were. That's how do you maintain it? So
That's
I think there's a lot of it could have just as easily been a guy working in a factory. It could have been a guy. It could have been a doctor. It could have been a. You pick the industry. I just happen to have some expertise in the newspaper industry, and I think a newsroom is a really cool place to find some characters and write about.
Well, they say write what you know is I
Yes,
don't know who said that, but it sounds like you kind of wrote part of your life story.
I did it, and I would say the character, the protagonist in the book is probably about 50% me. He did some things that I would never consider doing, but he's an interesting character, and I think he's likable, but he's a very flawed man. And I think his flaws come to light, and um, they make him more human in so many ways. And that was
Mhm.
kind of the fun part too, is developing characters and doing those sorts of things.
When you you see a lot of times with reporters and athletes or politicians, and they know them. I mean, they have a relationship, and their
Right.
job is to tell their story. But
Yes.
when the lights are off, when the cameras aren't going, how is that relationship? Is it like, oh, Bob, how you doing? Or is it more cut and dry?
You know what? I made it a point every now and then that every time I approached an athlete, someone I was doing a story with, I didn't have a notebook in my hand or a tape recorder, because it becomes, if I developing nothing transactional relationships, where every time you approach somebody you want someone. That's the gist of the relationship. You're never going to move beyond that. You're never going to get deep with that person, because how much trust can you really build if every time you talk to them you want something from them?
Yeah.
That's a valid
and
point.
and that's what life is about: relationships, no matter what. Reporting, so much more. I mean, you develop relationships with these people, and you want to your success is based on their ability to trust you. You have to build that trust. And
Mhm.
even with the tough stories, the ones where athletes get into trouble, they don't always like it, but you always show up the next day and
Yeah.
you let them vent for a while, and then you have your conversation. They're not always happy with you, but a respect is formed through that, by giving them a voice too.
Mhm. Do you think it's still possible for objectivity to exist, or do you think that's just sort of something we tell ourselves?
I think that objectivity is the cornerstone to journalism. And sadly, I look at a lot of journalism right now, and it's in and it objectivity is become secondary to getting clicks, and making sure we mistake online likes and reposts as you did your job well, and you just happen to say something someone liked. At this point, doesn't mean you're accurate in any way, shape, or form. But good journalism is always objective.
Yes, and that's hard to find. Um, and I've heard a lot of people say that, like, a lot of athletes or politicians will be like, "Oh, hey, how's the kids?" and stuff like that. So there is a relationship of some sort, um,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah,
that's good.
the first time I realized this was when I had an I was a columnist, and I was covering the Kansas City Royals one year, and they had an athlete named Vince Coleman, who almost got thrown out of baseball for throwing a firework at a group of fans and injured a child. It was a bad move, and he admitted it. It was a horrible move, but he was a scourge of baseball for about 2 weeks, and almost lost his job forever. And I remember the first time I met him, I we talked about it, and he was very open with me, and he was very contrite about it, and we developed a little relationship. And he is the first athlete who ever asked me how my vacation was. I had gone back to California to see family and was away for a couple of weeks, and he didn't see me. And I said, I got back. He goes, "Where you been?" And I said, I was visiting family. He goes, "Tell me about it." And he sat down and he wanted to know everything I did. And at that point, it became like a relationship. And I'd be probably pushing it a little too far to say it was a friendship, but there was something between us. There was something that we liked each other. And he knew I had a job to do, and I knew he had a job to do. But we found this middle ground, which was very special to me.
Maybe he just wanted to talk about somebody else instead of being
Yeah,
the center of the attention. It just wanted to kind of know that there's a world existing beyond him.
absolutely. Absolutely. And athletes tend to they live in a very self-centered world in a lot of ways. You know, they've been the stars of their stories for their entire lives. And I think when they start to get into a later in their careers and they realize that there are other people involved, um, it I think they grow up too, and it's special to watch that transformation.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of the young athletes have a group that stays with them constantly, and they can either crab, bring them down with them, or they can project them up.
Yeah.
And we've seen that. We've seen both in sports. And I did do some homework because I wanted to ask. I had all the sports questions lined up. I wanted to ask like the urinal scoop, and I wanted to ask about your favorite teams. I had all that too, but I was like,
we're not going to talk about the Westminster Dog Show or anything.
Well, I mean, if you want to, if you covered it.
I've never been there. Okay, so let's talk sports.
Okay. Well, tell us about the urinal scoop. That was one question I did have. That I was like, I want to know. Well, unless you can't tell too much.
No, I can tell the story. So
okay.
So back in 1993, and keep in mind, I grew up in San Francisco, and Joe Montana is still probably he's on the Mount Rushmore of San Francisco athletes to come through, just beloved. And Joe, I moved to Kansas City in 1991. At this point, Joe is injured for a couple of years, misses the 91, 92 seasons, and 93 is coming around in the spring of 93. And Steve Young has supplanted him as the 49ers quarterback. Another Hall of Fame quarterback, did a great job. And the 49ers know they have to do something with Joe. So they start talking about trading him. And the Kansas City Chiefs, the team I'm covering, are very interested. So it's this rumor that's going around, but nobody knows anything about it. And I'm working at the stadium one day in April. And there's really nothing going on at the stadium that day. They had some off-season workouts, and I talked to a couple of players, and everyone looked at me wondering why I was there. And I'm just like, I'm just working in the press box, going to go over the baseball game afterwards. And so I went to the bathroom down the hall, and I'm doing my business, and somebody walks in, urinal next to me. I look over, and it's Joe Montana. And I said, "Oh," and obviously I don't have a notebook in my hand because I'm doing something else. So I said, "Hey, do you know everyone in this town is looking for you?" And he goes, "Looks like you found me." And I said, and I was kind of starstruck at that moment because this is a guy who and I was in college. He was, he had thrown the big the catch against the Dallas Cowboys.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden my journalistic face kind of kicks in and I start peppering him with questions. I don't have a notebook in my hand, like I said, but he starts answering everything I'm saying and I'm trying to remember him. And I get done peeing and I walk over to the sink. He's still peeing and I'm still peppering him with questions and he's answering everything I've asked. And then the head coach of the Chiefs walks in on us and he looks at me and he says, "Pat, this is all off the record, isn't it?" And I looked at him and I smiled and he goes, "Okay, just be kind to us." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "But I need a quote from you too." And he gave me a quote and we had the story. So that's how it all came down.
That is a great story. A little awkward, but a great story.
Yeah, so everybody looked at me and said, "Wow, breaking stories while peeing. You are a superhero there."
So is that like the peak of your career, or?
You know what? That one kind of did a lot because that was when it just created a situation where I broke this story. Well, the story eventually everybody got the story. The bottom line is that it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we didn't go to press until midnight that night. So by the time we had it with everybody else, well, we had more because we had an interview with Joe Montana. Now, granted, he was predisposed himself at that moment, but it turned into a fun thing. But it also created a situation where I was getting called by a lot of reporters and radio stations from all over the country to talk about the Joe Montana trade. And so it became kind of a big deal. So it was fun.
Did you have a relationship with Joe after that?
Oh yeah, I saw him every day.
Wow.
He got traded to the Chiefs, and he spent 2 years there, I would see him every day, and we would talk every day. He was actually, if you didn't want to talk football with him, if you wanted to talk about anything else, he was very good, and he knew the problem with talking to somebody about football who is like playing, three-dimensional chess while you're playing, Chinese checkers, or is you don't understand half of what he's saying, what he sees out there and all. You could write it, but it would just be boring as hell because most people wouldn't understand it. And so if you're writing that sort of story with him, it's almost a waste of time because you're doing it more out of pretentiousness than anything. Your readership can't understand what's going on, and that's the bottom line. Is if your readers don't understand what you're writing, it's like using a big word. Why use a word they don't understand? Why have Joe Montana break down what he sees on the football field when most people have no idea? So
have you thought about writing a story about some of your other adventures?
Yeah, I've had a few. I mean, I actually wrote. So the second book that I'm writing is actually it's a. Everybody wanted to know what became of my protagonist in this story, so I came up with one more book for him, and it's what happens. What is your second chapter in life, and what do you do to stay relevant when the thing that you did and you were very good at is suddenly taken away from you? And it becomes what is your motivation for getting up each day? And I think it's something everybody faces in life.
Mm-hmm. Eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
We all right now.
Yeah, you go through retirement and you say, okay, today's Wednesday. What am I going to do today? And how am I going to stay relevant? How am I going to make people? How am I going to stay out there? I think Ernest Hemingway said, every man dies twice in their lives, when they actually die and the last time someone utters your name. And how do you make it so you become unforgettable, where people are always talking about you?
I heard, I think it was George Bernard Shaw that said, if you want to be remembered after you're gone, you either do something worth writing about or write something worth reading.
That's a great line.
Mm-hmm.
So which one did you choose?
Well, I'm a writer.
All right. All
so
right.
I can't do, I guess. I'm just going to write about it.
There you go. No,
I'm just an old firefighter, paramedic. I'll be forgotten. So
no, you're writing too. You'll finish.
No,
your book.
you know what's going to happen is that life you saved will never be forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those lives.
No.
Yeah, you're the real hero. So
no. Which the way you continue your legacy in this field is you teach someone everything you know, and then have them teach their students everything they know. And true story, my aunt was in hospice a few months ago, last summer, and the paramedics took her back before the doctor and stuff. And one of the kids looks at me and goes, "You look familiar." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, I used to work in Knoxville before I moved to Georgia." And he goes, "Did you train my mom?" And I'm like, "Who are you?" And ironically, I had, and he remembered me from coming up to the ambulance station as a kid. Like,
that's pretty good.
I need a beer.
I'm more impressed with the fact that they let someone from Tennessee into Georgia.
Well, I had to weasel my way in.
I know. I could see where they'd give you a day pass, maybe, but
it wasn't there. Well, they were desperate for paramedics, so
that explains it. Then, yeah, you brought with you a superpower, so good
exactly.
For you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I never told them I was a volunteer fan. I was like, "Go Dogs."
There you go.
It's college football, Jen. Sorry.
It's okay. I'm just like, oh, it's over my head, but that's okay. I'm just trying to follow along. I do have a question though. Did you get that date?
With the girl? Oh. You know,
it's been bugging me. I'm like, I want to know. I know we got off topic, but about your book, but I want to know.
That's a great question. I don't think I ever asked, and I don't know that I had the game to ask her at that point. I think my teacher was exactly right, you know, in what he said. And high school's like a kid on a bike with training wheels. You know, you have no idea what you're doing. I mean, you take those wheels off and you're going to trip over right away. You know, it just doesn't happen. So I don't think I got the date. But I don't know that I asked either. And you know, that question where they say, what would you tell your 18-year-old self, you know, as a 60-year-old man? And the question, or the thing I always say is, ask her out, because you don't realize that she was just as scared as you were at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to think beyond yourself when you're a teenager. Yeah,
she had all the same insecurities as you did, and you just don't realize it at the moment.
See, one of my first dates was sorry, off topic, but one of my first dates is high school. Walking down the hall, there was this guy I really liked. He was on the wrestling team. He was a big fella. And I walked a little too close behind him as he's putting his arm through his jacket, and he punched me in the face and then ended up taking me for coffee.
Wow, that's a good story. Yeah. Was it an apology coffee, or was there something romantic there?
No, I think it was an apology coffee. Okay. But I thought I counted it as a date.
There you go. Now,
there was no second date, though.
Well, I would ask, did you even like coffee at that point? Or if he would have just recommended anything, you would have said, you know.
Anything.
Yeah.
Maybe not anything, but yeah, no, it's just like we could have gone for like poutine. I don't know if you know what poutine is, Coach. I would have been happy with that.
Man, if you're in we all laugh at Canadians for poutine.
You do.
Yep.
Don't
Yeah.
knock it till you try it.
We tried to put a little gravy on anything; it'll be better, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Some
Yeah.
cheese, some fries, and gravy can't go
Yeah.
wrong. You can put a lot of things on there.
I was in upstate New York one time, and they had something called garbage can poutine, which was everything that it sounds better than it sounds worse than it really is. It had everything from the fridge that was left over there, and they just threw
Sounds
it
like
in
our
there.
taco salad. Like, yeah, we got to use up a bunch of vegetables. Let's make taco salad and throw everything on it.
That's it. Yeah, but we're glad the Canadians have something to brag about. And
Caesars and poutine.
yeah,
and toots.
exactly. Congrats on that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
We hold them proud. I was going to ask you if you could, like if your younger self saw you now, do you think that, like, could you have imagined where you're at now and all the things that you'd seen and what you've accomplished when you were younger?
I don't know that I've accomplished all that much, but I did get to live my dream, which is great because I knew when I was very young what I wanted to do. I wanted to. I don't know if you remember the book or the TV show The Odd Couple. You look way too young to.
I look
but-
younger than I am.
But I loved The Odd Couple. I thought Jack Klugman's character was, other than having a tuna fish sandwich under his pillow, which kind of grossed me out. I thought I thought that the job he had was amazing, and I grew up in a very sports centric place. And all of my friends, we were playing baseball in the summer and football in the fall and basketball in the winter, and we would sit there and talk to each other, and my best friends would say, I'm going to be a wide receiver for the 49ers. And another would say, I'm going to be the shortstop for the Giants. Another would say, I'm going to be the point guard for the Warriors. And I would say, I'll write about you, because I was pretty pragmatic. While I love my sports, I knew that I was a little guy who was kind of slow and couldn't hit a curveball. And so I was going to, I was never going to make it as a professional athlete as much as I loved it. And I wanted to be a sports writer. I thought going to the ballpark each day and seeing a ball game and talking to these guys and telling their stories it just appealed to me at a very early age. So my younger self knew very young what he wanted to be, and somehow God put me in the path of so many people who helped me get there. And I think that's the truly the small miracle about it is you can't do this yourself. You can't walk this journey by yourself. There are people who come into your life and help you get to the next obstacle, the next place. And I think that is a prevailing theme to my book as well, is the people who step into your life and make your life better and put you, give you the direction you need, or the butt kicking you need sometime too.
Yeah.
It's deep.
Some of us need
Am I
more
getting a
butt
little too
kicking
deep
than
for you?
others.
I'm sorry.
No, that's cool.
No, but it's,
I like
it's
it.
all true. It's all true.
Yeah.
You talked
you
about
think-
the
Oh, go
Odd
ahead.
Couple. I was just going to say, I watched it growing up, and I was going to work for FDNY and live in a high rise just like those two in New York City.
All right.
Never
Yeah.
did.
There was a show that I used to watch, and I'm not sure if you guys have seen it. It's WKRP in Cincinnati.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I loved that show. I always think
That was
about
a
that whenever
great
somebody
show.
says radio shows. I always think about that one.
That's a great show. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very, very smart, well written. Yeah.
And
Amazing.
very accurate. My dad was a DJ. Very
All right.
accurate.
All right.
I was gonna ask you that. Do you think great stories still exist? Like if no one's really reading them, or it's kind of like if the
Ooh.
tree falls in the forest and nobody's there to hear it, does it still make a sound, kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that it's kind of like asking when we stopped listening to vinyl if music would go away. We just changed mediums, really. We now everything's online, and you can download a song just as easily as buying an LP, which we all grew up in the going to record stores, and what a great place to go that was. And you know, uh, the newspaper might be going away, and I think it's been tumultuous and a bad thing for communities because the newspaper has kind of a binding force to a community. It creates almost a village square effect that the internet can't hasn't really figured out a way to do in a very micro place. It's got the macro figured out where I know what's going on in Taiwan right now, or anywhere, Iran, all of that stuff. But for local news and local just stories about a garage sale that's going on this weekend at somebody's house, or that's been the challenge, I think. And I think communities have taken a hit because of the uh, the demise of the newspaper industry.
Well, you might be happy to know that our town that I live in now, we do get a newspaper just for local events mostly.
Nice.
So it
So
still exists.
how often do they print?
I think it's every weekday.
Nice.
Almost every weekday, because it seems to show up. I never ordered it. It just shows up on our front porch, and I'm like, okay. And I read through it, and it's all
That's
local stuff.
That's awesome. Now,
Yeah.
I came from the last newspaper I worked at was in Lincoln, Nebraska, and yeah, they still have a newspaper there that prints every day, but it's a mere pittance of what it used to be. And I think that's the problem is we get stuck in the in the just the throes of what it used to be like when a newsroom was just thriving, and there were 50 reporters, and now there's 5 reporters. Clearly you don't have the news space in the paper each day, nor the reporters to cover an entire town anymore. So you cover what you can, but meanwhile you're paying you're asking the consumer to pay twice as much as they ever did for the same product, which is not nearly the same product anymore. And that's a sad reality of where we are right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when ebooks came out, they thought that, there was some fear that they would take over and we no longer have print books. But I think there's still enough people out there that like to hold books, that like to collect books. So
Right.
as long as there's people out there that like to read the physical newspaper and continue to request it, maybe there'll still be some printed.
Yeah, I think there are going to be some there. You'll see some towns like New Orleans is a great example of this. I want to say they go online 5 days a week and come out with a weekend paper, and it's created a situation where the weekend paper has become very popular. Um, and people tend to have more time to sit down and read a paper on a Sunday morning, and it's almost a little slice of Americana as well, or Canadian Kana, whatever you guys call it up there.
I don't know if we call it anything.
Yeah,
When I was a kid, the Sunday Washington Post, reading about the Redskins. That was, excuse me, I just offended somebody.
absolutely.
The Commanders.
I just remember the comics. Calvin and Hobbes was one of my
Absolutely.
favorite.
It was the
Yeah.
comics too, but
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Sunday sports section, I would head first into it every day before game. Of course, back then you got 2 games a day, so
Yeah.
well, depending
Well,
on
and
your market, DC got a little more, but
I will tell you, you bring up the Washington Post and their decision earlier this year to do away with this entire sports section. I mean,
yes,
what in the world is that? Some of the best sports writers I was brought up with are came from the Washington Post, and it was a beautiful sports section. It was well read, and it was appealing to look at, and it was thick, and you could find anything you wanted in there. And then they said, you know what? We're going to do away with sports. We're not going to cut down our sports section. We're going to get rid of it altogether. And when asked why, the executive editor said something like, we can't be all things to all people, but you used to be.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Washington Post growing up, that was the paper. I mean,
yeah.
That was.
I think we got the Washington or something similar to that up here. Maybe it was the Times. I'm not sure. But yeah, I remember hearing about it too.
I think the Washington Post was delivered worldwide. I don't know if it was the same one we got.
Absolutely, it was.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I always wondered about that, how that worked, because, I mean, gosh, they're somewhere else. I mean, when you're a kid, especially, you're thinking, Canada. That's another planet,
Isn't it?
When you're a kid,
when you can't drive, and yeah.
That's interesting. I did not know that it was absolutely the same. So, technology, they should still have something. I agree, but
yeah.
And then there was if you ever lived there, that they would have a sports magazine like once a month or something for the Washington Post, and that was like heaven. So,
is it just? They used to have like magazine subscriptions, didn't they? And they deliver a magazine to your house every month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you remember selling magazines as a kid?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I mean, it was either magazines or Christmas paper.
Yeah.
Chocolate bars.
Selling magazines.
That one too,
yeah. They, I think about this often when we were kids. All of the youth organizations we belonged to, be it Boy Scouts or Little League Baseball and the Cub Scouts and all of those things, they were in it to get us to hawk items for them, because all we did was sold things. It seemed like that was half the job, was selling things. I remember selling light bulbs one year. I'm like, what are we doing selling light bulbs?
Yeah. Well, now they got kids come around. I'm sorry, we're so totally off topic, but now they got kids come around like once a month. And it's like, do you have any bottles? We're doing a bottle drive, which, I mean, that's great. They're not selling stuff, but I mean, that's my spending money.
Yeah, that's funny. So I had one the other day where my niece came up and she said, my school is doing a fundraiser. And I said, what are you doing? And they said, nothing. And I said, well, so why are you asking me? And they're like, we just want you to give money. And I said, so you're not selling pizzas, or you're not doing anything crazy. You just want me to give money. And she said, yeah. So I said, all right, this is crazy, but I'm your uncle. And I did it. And I went on there, and they wanted a tip for it too.
Oh my gosh.
I remember doing a fundraiser and I had to jump rope for like 4 hours.
I remember those ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the dances. Remember those? The 24-hour dances. Yeah.
Do you remember bowl-a-thons?
Yes.
And my kids do a readathon thing. So they have to read for like 1,000 hours for an entire month, and they can raise money.
It's all a way to make money for somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody's getting rich on all this. We need to look into all of this, because it's child labor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And they really sorry.
Go ahead. No,
I was going to say, unless they're ambitious, they're really only selling to their families. So they're just, skimming money out of their parents' paychecks.
Exactly. But they figured, you know what? If any of us walked up to a door and tried to sell somebody a chocolate bar, they would look at you and go, get out of here. But you bring a cute kid up there. How many would you like me to buy?
Oh yeah. At least 5 boxes.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're just schlocking it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Patrick, one question we always ask our guests, and it's not about dogs, unless you know haunted dogs or dog man. Have you ever had any paranormal experiences? Do you believe in that type of thing?
I'm not naive enough or arrogant enough to think that human life is the only thing that's in our world right now. So I have never come across anything, but I've been in places where you felt like you weren't alone.
Mm-hmm.
That's about as far as I can go with that whole thing, where you feel like there is some presence there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Like you're
it's
being watched.
Yeah.
yeah.
The eyes
Yeah.
burning into the back of your skull.
Yeah, you feel like you're not alone at that moment. And I've always thought that it was something like that. So that's
No.
about as far as I can go on that one.
Well, no, I think there's a lot, because you can go into certain areas and just feel a difference in the air, the heaviness, the
Yes.
stillness. And so, I mean, it may not be a paranormal thing, but there's a weight, there's emotion to that. It's charged.
Yes.
I had a guy come on the show tell me one time he could track thoughts with the little dowsing rods. And he said that if somebody is having a really negative, depressing day, that can radiate out and almost affect a whole neighborhood. And he said that's why there's so many places where there's not bad people, it's just bad things happening. And I was like, I don't
Maybe
know
that's
that
why hospitals are so depressing then.
But well, I mean, it's the energy. So I kind of see it. I don't know that I believe you could track it with but who am I to say? So I don't question.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, everybody has their own journey, you know. So, and you know, you might not ever see anything in life, but you know there's something there. I think we all should admit we don't know as much as we think we do.
No. What do they say? What movie was that? It was with Scarlett Johansson. Lucille, was that her name? Lucy? Where they
I
say,
know what you're talking. Yeah.
Yeah, that you use like 10% of your brain, and she was someone who actually learned how to use 100%, and she became just dangerous. Like she could start fires from, just staring at something. So imagine that kind of power, huh?
Yeah. Then the eyes in the back of your, they boil your brains with a look.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So Patrick, what's next for you? You said you've got book 2.
Yeah, book 2 is just about the first draft is completed. We're finalizing the audiobook for Dogs Chase Cars right now, which has been kind of a fun little venture. Have you guys have you dealt with the audiobook process?
Not yet.
Okay, so it's so the first thing was auditioning voices. And I was like, okay, I want there to be a slight New York accent, but I don't want them to sound like, like Rosanna Dana or someone like that. And so, so it was going through the process of listening to voices, and so they gave me this one guy, and he sounded like, the first guy sounded like Elmer Fudd. And I was like, no, I can't do this. I mean, I'm laughing just listening to him say, we're hunting wabbit, I don't know. So the second voice sounded like someone out of NPR. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to fall asleep listening to, the first paragraph. And then I got down to about 3. And I can't really tell you, I don't want to swear online or on this podcast, but there was a certain word that starts with F, and I had to know how he said the word, if it sounded like it flowed out of his mouth or something that he wasn't used to saying, because the character in my book tends to use that word every now and then, but it had to sound natural. So I had him read that line. And that was the deciding factor between the last 3. So I'm not proud, but yes, that's.
It's like, can you imagine go to an audition? All I need you to do is swear.
Yeah, I need you to say the F word, and I need you to say it in this context. And they read this line, and it was funny. It's just, I wish I would have recorded that. That would have been so much fun. So.
That's a cool story, though. And I imagine he went back. They probably got their own little clique of people. And he's like, "You're not going to believe this one." We've always wanted to do this.
Yeah. Didn't
I
have
was
to
just
say
seeing
anything else.
Yes, I was just seeing if I could get him to do it, and he didn't. No, it was actually important to me that it sounded authentic.
Hmm.
So
The
anyway,
New Yorkers have a specific
yeah,
ebb with it. If you've ever
I'm
heard
I'm walking here. Come on,
That's right. That's
Yeah.
So
That's right.
anyway, so it was that was how I finally decided on it. But that was a fun part, and so my biggest challenge in the whole audio book thing was the town in where the story takes place is a town in Kansas City, right outside of Kansas City, called Olathe, and the guy mispronounced Olathe throughout, and I would have to go, come on now, Olathe, and he would go Olathi, Othello. He would just make something new up every time. So I was like, all right, we got to work on this. So
That sounds like it's going to be fun when I get to that point.
so it was to answer your question, it's put book 2 on hold, and I also I think book 1 flowed so freely and so it came out of me in a way that just seemed natural. And I read it sometimes and I go, I don't remember writing this, but I'm so glad I did. And it's when you get into that groove of writing. And the second book, I never felt that that pronounced about it, where I was like, it flowed freely. It was more of a labor. So I don't know how good it really is. So, and the last thing I want to do is publish something that's not very good. So, yeah.
Sounds like you got a good editor who will tell you if it needs some work.
I do. I do have a great editor, and he will, but then again, do I really want him to tell me this is shit? This is really bad. Did you write
Hey,
the
if
first
that's
one?
the worst they can say, then you can always improve it from there.
Yes, but what if he says, "Are you sure you wrote the first one too?" And I just I want to see where it goes. I want to close the chapter on the first one before I move on to the second one. So, does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you are now an accomplished author. You've written a novel.
So you say.
Well, I'm going to buy it because I'm the sports guy, and I'm going to look for the dog story. But Patrick, thank you for overlooking my stupidity.
No, I liked your stupidity.
I have moments. It's if you only knew. Oh, don't worry, Jana's going to write me.
You like that double-edged compliment?
I was going to say, that's a compliment veil? That's like a passive-aggressive insult veiled in a half compliment.
I deserve
where I come from, that is a sign of love right there. That's my love language.
I deserve it. So, thank you for your time. Oh, before you go, we are live in Australia, and we'll be overnight in Florida. I probably won't make it to press there tonight, but we'll be overnight tomorrow in Florida, and then in Nashville, Tennessee on Saturday. So please make sure to tell all of our audience where they can find you, find your stuff, stuff like that.
All right. Well, you could find me on Twitter or X or whatever letter we're using these days for it at P. Sangiamino. You can find me on Instagram at Patrick Sangiamino. I even have a website called patricksangiamino.com. And I would be remiss if I didn't say something like, "G'day, mate," or something like that right now, since we're in Australia. And they're probably all, turning off their radios right now because of this.
See what time it is there. No, we're actually, we're the afternoon show there, tomorrow's afternoon show. So my Thursday afternoon show. So
we're ahead of the game.
Yeah, they're on their lunch break, and they're like, "What the hell did we just hear?" But
he's smirching our language.
No, Patrick. Okay, you were saying every week, I try and figure out why do people listen to me, and I'm stupid. I don't know what I'm doing half the time.
No, you're not.
It is something when you do get to meet so many people and you do get to get a voice out there, even if it's a stupid one. But I'll beat myself up over this. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to have you come back with your second book. I'm gonna message you.
I would love to come back.
Let's see if I can get you to autograph one, put from the Westminster Dog to Sportcat or something.
Absolutely. You're going to be in the doghouse for a while, so
I deserve it. I deserve it. You're absolutely right. I'm going to punch Mickey because he sent me another dog person right when I was doing. Anyhow,
it was just the title, though.
Yeah. No. Well, it's so funny when they were putting a cover together. They had like a dog, right, and a car, and I said, "Hey," and I said, "What are you guys doing?" And they're like, "It just seemed like it speaks to us right now." And I'm like, "Guys, you need to read the book before you design the title. Okay, just stop this right now."
Hey, at least you can be sure, those people who are looking beyond the cover.
Exactly. I appreciate that. And the inside story now to how the book came to be. It's a metaphor. Come on now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
About my lack of game when I was in hii school.
You picked up for it later in life with
not really, but we'll let you think so. But I appreciate you saying so.
Thank you so much for coming on, Patrick. I really appreciate it.
I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed both of you. Thank you so much. It's been great.
All right. Have a great evening. Thank you.
You too. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
I did the cover art. I did everything.
That's okay. It's okay. I don't know about you. I think it's later for you than it is for me.
Well, you know what all I've got going on. So, so next week, let's see, what do we got going on? We get another show next week, and maybe it's about dogs. Hell, I don't know. At this point, I don't know what the hell it's about. What am I doing a show about? Let's see.
I don't know. I just show up and smile and look pretty.
Yeah, and you do that well. Do we not have any guest book next week? Oh, we gotta have a guest book next week. And apparently I can't I don't know how to use a computer either. So we have Catherine Asti. I think I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. She writes about stuff from the Smoky Mountains, and Brad Anderson, he writes novels. So
is that Jackie Askew?
Maybe.
Yeah.
No, she
because
no,
the name is familiar.
Fire marshal. No, she was the fire marshal. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
No, yeah, she was a fire marshal. But
yes.
But so we'll be back next week. And Brenda is, by any chance, if anybody's still listening that wondered about Brenda, she is alive. They haven't found any internal organs yet, so they're still looking. So we didn't have a Daily Gazette today because she had to go for they had to do a brain scanner and then didn't find a brain or something. I don't know. So we didn't have a show, but hopefully we will tomorrow.
She might be listening to you.
Well, she is. She's listening. She's threatening me. But so we'll be back definitely for sure next week. Next Wednesday we have a show. Jen will be with me, and I've heard rumor that Queen Harley may come back. It's a rumor. We'll see. So let's hope so. I hope so. So we'll both be back at least, and of course, I will be on the Thin Line Rock Station tomorrow from noon till 2 playing records. Jen, tell everybody where they can find you and your stuff. And before I forget it, all of this is in the show notes. If you're listening and you were like, wait a minute, I don't know where I want to get in touch with these people, especially the dumb, crazy one, just go to the Sportcat shows on YouTube and it'll be in the show notes. Probably not tonight, but at least by tomorrow.
And if you want to check out my series or follow me along at Facebook or Instagram, you can find everything on my website at jmshawauthor.com. My first book is just relaunched. My second one just got its new cover, and we're working on the third. The fourth one is already done. It's got its cover too. I did things out of order just because that's the way it worked out.
It happens. Well, thank you for joining us. And thank you to everybody in Australia and WZQR and WRFN for allowing us into your homes and your ears. We will see you soon. And let's push a button and get the heck out of here. If I can figure out how. There we go. Don't even add up or you're bored.
It's okay. Hey, at least you've got something to do on that end. I'm clicking a pen.
You do it very well. So, see, that's the hook. I need to get the radio listeners to come see my beautiful co-host Jim.